Who's doing what?
The intro.
What intro? Did we do an intro, or did we just start talking shit?
I fucking hate it when he does this every time. This is going to be the intro.
Not every time. Not every time. In the 3.5 episode, we had an intro.
You were setting a precedent for this being the normal behavior.
Sorry, what?
Hello. Welcome to Down to the Edge, episode 6.
Is it episode 6?
There is no God.
I'm not doing this bit again because we're all bored of this. But is it though?
It is.
Episode 6. Wow. You'd think we'd have at least one new subscriber by now.
I mean,
Thanks for watching,
channel,
by the way.
Yeah, my channel has gained like 20 subscribers in the last couple of weeks.
Wow, and your stuff is terrible.
Yeah, go watch it.
Yeah, it's a big recommendation from me. So what am I doing wrong? Maybe I'm being shadow banned again.
Maybe they never stopped shadow banning you.
That's possible. I mean, I keep closing and setting up new accounts. Okay.
Yeah.
But we're here
We
to do a professional analysis of Black Swan, which he rummaged around inside my wife's box and just pulled out.
That didn't come out right.
It came out exactly right. And we had to do this film. Now, it's about as much fun as being sodomized by King Kong, which is why we didn't actually bother watching it.
I've seen it before.
Yeah, so have I. 14 years ago.
It's been a while.
It would be enough, yeah. We watched the trailer.
And some liberal idiot's review of it.
I couldn't really hear that.
I can kind of hear it. He was just going through the surface
Narrative, yeah. And we were pretty drunk.
I don't know if that's pretty drunk.
No, sorry, you were pretty stoned. I was pretty drunk.
I was a little drunk.
And a little stoned.
Okay.
Because we're professionals. We get stoned and drunk and watch terrible movies, so you don't have to.
That seems like an oversimplification of what
Does it though? Is it really? Is that an oversimplification of what we do? What do we do then? Put it into more sophisticated terms. What do we do?
We help our audience determine what
10 people watched the last show.
worth their time in exploring the...
Well, according to the viewing figures, they don't think we're worth their time. So,
look, man, you asked me to put together a complicated sentence in real time.
Yeah. Are you stoned now?
A little bit.
A little bit, okay. I'm not drunk. A little hungover, but not drunk. And I had a curry last night, and it was probably the worst curry I've ever had. It was really bad.
Well, it's your fault for eating curry.
You're dangerously close to racism at this point. Keep going.
I can get there all the time. I know exactly where it is.
It was really shit. It's a place I normally go to, but they've opened a new shop, a new store. They're up to 3 shops now, and I think the chef has gone on to the new one, and they've just left a cleaner in charge or something, and it was just fucking horrible. And my guts are on fire.
Everybody I know eats at local restaurants like you do.
Yeah.
And everybody I know has stories about them shitting themselves to death. But you know who never shits themselves to death? This fucking guy.
And dead people.
Yes, and dead people. In case anybody was curious.
Yeah, I mean, some of my best friends are dead people.
Because I always eat at
boring
Western places.
and have mental health issues. I'm just going to finish that sentence for you.
I eat at Western establishments and I buy my food at the supermarket.
I buy my food at the supermarket mostly.
But do you though?
Yes. You've bumped into me in the supermarket.
Yes,
we come home with the same bags.
I also know that your wife and everybody does market shopping for...
We do market shopping, yes. We buy our fruit and vegetables at the market where they're all decent quality, rather than buy exactly the same thing in a supermarket with an additional markup.
I don't get sick and shit myself.
I only get sick and shit myself when I eat curry. That particular curry. Normally it's fine.
This has been such a great.
Yeah.
We're gonna cut this bit.
No, we're not.
We're not.
We're doing a whole thing on mental health. See, we're building it. This is actually going somewhere. I actually have a plan with this.
It's not. No, he doesn't.
Maybe it is. I don't care.
It sounds good when you say it like that.
Well, I was going somewhere, but I don't have the luxury of working with professionals. Yeah, Cambodia. I work in Cambodia.
Are you
boring.
Saying I'm unprofessional?
Well, you blew it. You blew my bit. I was leading up to mental health and then moving into what was the film again?
No, I knew what you were doing. I just didn't care.
That's two of us.
Yeah.
Well, two of us and the entire audience. Everybody on YouTube has joined.
Hi, all four of you.
No, everyone who's not watching us, like, yeah, we don't care either. Fuck these guys.
We're all in agreement.
Yeah. Talking of which,
Black Swan.
what a terrible film.
Yeah.
By Darren Aronofsky, one of the most boring directors ever.
It's not fun to watch.
He's a great director. Let's be fair, the cinematography is fantastic, everything's fantastic, but he doesn't entertain at all. It's
and he knocked this one out of the park. He spent $13 million making it.
only 13 million. He was looking for 40 or 50 million.
And it pulled in 350 million roughly.
Yeah. You didn't see The Whale, did you?
No.
Well, that was his latest film, and that was massively overhyped. It really wasn't good. And
I just had no interest in Brendan Fraser in a fat suit as a sad old gay guy.
It was, it obviously had symbolism. He obviously represents America. His daughter hates him but just takes money off him. I mean, you can figure out what country that is.
Most of them.
Well, I'm being specific. The religion has abandoned him. He's eating himself to death, and he's going to die. He's on his last legs, and it's so ham-fisted. You know, the subtext there is it's so obvious. Honestly, really beneath Darren Aronofsky, it was very, very obvious. Brendan Fraser, is that his name?
Yeah,
I'm bad with names. He gave in what I would consider an adequate performance at best. I think people like him because people like him.
Yeah.
But he's very likable. But
he's not a great actor.
No, he never was.
People really do seem to like that guy.
Well, the guy went through some shit. He went through some serious shit. He was sexually abused on set. He was. It triggered some serious mental health problems for the guy, and he fought his way back.
Well, there's something about him. He's got that Keanu Reeves quality to him that makes you think that somehow this guy might have actually achieved stardom without ever joining the club and still has his soul.
I strongly doubt it, to be fair. I mean, I think the sexual abuse, I don't think it was the first time. I think
it almost never is.
No, I think there was a pattern of it, and it went too far, and he broke. That would be my take on it. But the guy's fought his way back from it, and he's done a great job. So he's a nice, very likable guy. But for that role in The Whale, you needed more than just a likable guy, and he is just a likable guy in a fat suit. It was a brave role, I guess. And Darren Aronofsky has stated all his protagonists die at the end. He kills everybody at the end. Spoiler alert, he spoils all his movies. Every single one of them. He reveals the ending before he even made the film. He's a little bit ham-fisted. This one is... this one has more layers, but this one was planned for decades. And there's a lot more symbolism, and it's probably a lot darker. Black Swan.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go into some background detail on what this film's actually about. And it's going to stretch credulity to breaking point.
Well...
Much like being sodomized by King Kong.
You've got to start with the idea that not a whole lot of what we're about to say is even verifiable. Unless you're like a deep web, dark web expert.
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, let's talk about an introduction to what this might be about. Then we're going to have to go into some details here, because it's going to be hard to get on board with this. No one is talking about this. You won't find this anywhere else on the web, or at least on YouTube or the mainstream media. But before I went to see the film, I was told what it was about. I had it explained to me. Someone said, this is what this film is about. If you go in and watch it with this in mind, you will understand it. And I did. And I walked out of the cinema thinking, okay, that's very clever. I do get this. And all the rest of the audience walking out going, what the fuck was that? And people walking out going, what the fuck was that? Do not spend 300 million on cinema tickets. So this film there was something odd going on with it, because it's not a likable film. It's not an enjoyable film. It's not a good film. It suffers from the Kubrick effect, where it's very clever, lots of embedded imagery, but it's not fun. And a movie has to be both. It has to have
it has to be
symbolism. It has to be entertaining. It has to be entertaining. I think a good example of this would be the butterfly effect. There's a lot going on in the butterfly effect, but you walk out of it thinking, wow, what a great story, and it was a fun journey as well. And it manages to toe the line between very clever, especially the director's cut.
Ashton Kutcher's best.
Yeah, easily, yeah. But it toes the line between a really smart script and a fun movie. You know, you walk out feeling like you weren't intellectually insulted and you had a fun time. It was a good film that gives you something to think about. And there are plenty of films like that, but this isn't one of them.
No.
Black Swan is just a drudge to get through. To be absolutely fair, we had problems with the file. It didn't work. So we caught little bits of it, we made a few notes, and then it broke again, and we just didn't get time to do it again. So, but it is hard to watch, even for 10 minutes. It's just awful. It's not fun to watch people torturing themselves and suffering. And I mean, Fight Club is effectively a similar story. You've got this guy going through severe mental health problems. His mind is falling apart, and he's constructing all this reality around him. But that film is brilliant. It's fun to watch all the way through. It's entertaining. There's some laughs through it.
Well, the difference there is writing and
the direction.
Not just direction.
Oh, I
but
think
cast, like
cast as well. Yeah.
Natalie Swan and Mila Kunis, for whatever their talents are.
Natalie Swan.
What'd I say?
Natalie Swan.
Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis for their talents.
Right.
Do not have the charisma that
they're not leads.
Brad Pitt could.
No. Well, I would challenge you to find somebody better for the role, in as much as what it is. But again, that's why the film fails, because you know this is a little lost girl who hasn't got much of a personality.
I don't know. Like, what if you just used Brad Pitt and Edward Norton
as ballet dancers?
Yeah.
Well, then you've got The Wrestler, haven't you? And then you've got a different movie.
Now we've made full circle.
Yeah.
Because he said also in the beginning that that's what this was supposed to be.
Right, yeah. Years ago, it was meant to be one film where the wrestler and Nina are a couple. And it's going to be an exploration of both of their worlds and how they are the same, in as much as women torture themselves and men torture themselves for the entertainment of art. So basically what we've got is a modern gladiator system where these people are being tortured to death, and they're doing it this time to themselves.
For the audience.
Yeah. One of my early notes at the beginning, where they're cutting the shoes, they're cutting their ballet shoes, and that is done, but it's way too long a scene. It's not fun to watch. It's way too much. A wide shot would have worked better. But that's because symbolically they're not cutting the shoe, they are the shoe. They're tearing into themselves, they're reconstructing themselves to be someone else's plaything. They are not functional people by themselves. Very deep symbolism there. And again, we've got Leroy, I mean, he's not the love interest. He's an absolute piece of shit all the way through. He's not a likable. He's a horrible person. He comes across as, I mean, the actor. I've never seen him in anything where I've actually liked him. Maybe it's because he's got a French accent.
I don't know who he is. is, but I didn't like him the minute
No.
he started talking.
He was the villain in one of the Bourne films, one of the Bourne comeback films, the Bourne Redundancy or whatever it was, and it's laughable. The guy is your build, and by this point, Bourne looks like a fucking tank. I mean, he's a bit older and he's padded out, and he still looks pretty fit, but he's gigantic, and he's holding his own against him, and just watching it going, I need more whiskey. It's just. If he was faster or something, okay, but it's not. They're just two old guys slapping each other.
That's how I feel about watching any Liam Neeson action movie these days.
Oh, he was good way back.
Like in the first Taken.
Yeah, the first Taken. What the fuck happened to those films? I mean, the first Taken was pretty decent. It was a thinking man's action film. It had a little bit of a plot to it. It was still nonsense, but it was elevated nonsense.
I liked the thing where this guy on YouTube somewhere had broke it down and...
Broken. God, you're so American.
What?
Broken.
Broke it?
Broke it, had broken it down.
Broke it down.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Tenses are important. Moving on.
I mean, yes, I get it. I'm an English teacher, but it's also Sunday fucking morning, man. But no, this guy had broken it down.
We've got it wrong. Let's just gloss over it.
On YouTube.
Where? What?
And it took Liam Neeson...
Have you had breakfast yet?
No. 16 cuts to get over it.
I like breakfast on Sunday morning.
16 cuts to get over a fence.
Wow, he could have bled to death. Which one was that?
2 or 3.
They were all very different. The first one was decent, nice grainy, dark film. The second one was absolute nonsense. And it ended with this big Indian guy slapping him around and he just beats him. And I remember thinking, is that it? That's the worst climax ever. And then the third one just turned into a big budget action movie with lots of yellow explosions. And I just remember thinking, this is just getting worse and worse. Because they could have made a good movie out of it.
Yeah.
The first one is done. They're not coming back for revenge. But because he's proved what he can do, maybe someone hires him to rescue their daughter or something along those lines. Yeah, we can go and do something more interesting.
Yeah, there's a way to franchise
There's
that.
a way to make it work, yeah. Have him go away, think about it, and in the end he's looking at pictures of his daughter and thinks, you know what, I'm going to help this guy. And he just gets in too deep. There's a way to make this work so that there's actually narrative logic there. Not, oh, they came back. Oh, right, okay, well then, off I go again. It makes no sense. I've killed all those people, but I know their brothers or something are coming back. It's nonsense.
He's got a grandfather in Venezuela.
Well, it's Hollywood, so some guy in a wheelchair could be the antagonist.
Oh, that happens
anything,
all the time,
yeah. He's.
You thought it was that badass guy you just beat? No, it was me, shriveled up in a wheelchair the whole time.
Yeah, these guys work for me. How are you paying them? For me, they work for me. But how? Well, just for me. It makes no fucking sense.
Sex Panther. 60% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about now.
That's a quote from Anchorman.
Anchorman. Yeah, I think you said it before. I think you've said it several times before.
A fucking great line.
Right. So stoned.
I bet you everybody watching this video knows that line.
What, like all 3 of them? What are we talking about?
Unfortunately, Black Swan.
Oh, fuck that film. We should have watched a more fun film. Top Dog was best.
Top Dog has been my favorite.
Yeah, that's been my favourite episode. I didn't hate the last one. It was pretty fun. You watch the playback and it's like, we had a laugh.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay.
Yeah, we had a laugh.
Watchable.
We had a laugh. It was. I'd like to have watched it more knowing what it was about, so that I could go in there and just say, yeah, this is nonsense. Let's just enjoy it for what it is.
I mean, I would have preferred having cleaned up audio that I could hear.
Yeah, well, the version I downloaded had subtitles, and you really needed that. It was so bad. That bit at the end where he's walking off into the sunset, and they're both talking as if they're talking through a metal can. It was just bad production.
Yeah.
Black Swan. Where were we? So these 2 actresses, they actually do a pretty good turn. They're pretty decent.
Well, they did months of training.
They lost a shitload of weight. They look horrible. They look really rough. They look like, well, they're too old to play these very young women who they're supposed to be portraying. So,
well, Natalie Portman at this point, you can see the lines on her face.
Yeah.
She's kind of aging out. Mila Kunis is right at the line.
Well, she's had a lot of surgery,
so
she looks worse. Yeah, they're both fighting. I mean, they're Hollywood. They're both fighting back the years, but they do a good job. They both have the body type for it. By the time they've lost the weight, this emaciated. It's like with the gymnasts. I hear that they don't get periods or anything. They're starving themselves, and they end up really damaging their bodies, and they have to retire by the time they get to 20 because their bodies are just fucked. I imagine it's the same with ballet dance. I mean, at some point, Natalie Portman did some damage and had to go to hospital. And this is an interesting thing. They had to have continual days off because of Natalie Portman toe, and they shortened that down to just calling it Portman toe, which is a very clever joke. And it's just kind of a hint that there's much more symbolism here. Whoever can come up with a joke like that's a pretty smart joke. So there's a bit more going on. The crew, they knew what they were doing. There's definitely some hidden stuff in this movie.
Oh, there's absolutely hidden stuff in this movie. Whether or not the writers would ever openly say, this is what we were talking about, this is what you were talking about.
Yeah. There was an interesting thing in The Unmade Superman.
Which one?
Well, the unmade one with Nicolas Cage. Okay. This is an example of the sort of thing we're talking about here. They were putting together this movie with Nicolas Cage, and it was almost up to production. It was going to be a blockbuster movie. Everything was planning. They were wearing the costumes. They were starting to film footage. And then all of a sudden, one of the producers just came in with a book and said, the villain must look like this. And he had this pre-human hominid skull. And he said, this spaceship must look like this skull. We must put this skull in the movie. And there was no explanation for it. So they started making a spaceship that looked like this skull, and it had to look exactly like it. And I've seen the movie about how this movie failed to get into production. And nobody had an explanation. They were just shaking their heads. Why the hell have we got to put this in there? It doesn't make any sense. And of course, it was never made. And then years later, Man of Steel gets made. And the codex, where all of their DNA is stored, is the exact same skull. Now, this is a different production company. This is different people. And for some reason, this skull that has really no place in the Superman universe appears in both movies. Now, for some reason, the people pulling the strings, that symbol had to be in that story for some reason. And that's what we find in Black Swan. We find that these symbols are being shoehorned in that probably even the production crew have no idea about. Again, and this is a conspiracy theory that pushes it right to the edge. When we had the third Batman film being made, there was a map with a map of New York City with changed around to Gotham, and it had Sandy Hook in it. They had an area called off with a school in it, Sandy Hook. And the man who made the map was killed in a car crash when a truck swerved across and wiped him out, only days after the production. So that's very, very strange. And this is the kind of thing, why is that in there? How did that get in there? And this was before the Sandy Hook incident. So these kind of symbols go in there a lot. Now, Wallace and Gromit, that was a very British sort of Christmas movie thing, but they were half-hour chunks of this claymation thing. And he went to Hollywood. Yeah, they're pretty funny. I mean, they're not great, but they're very British. You probably don't like them, do you?
Okay.
They're a little too subtle, even for me. They don't tend to appeal very much to kids. Now, he went to Hollywood and made the Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And he said, I'll never work there again. They kept coming in last minute and ordering changes. And again, you can find weird symbolism in there that they forced on him. And because he didn't have time to plan for it, he didn't know what was going on. They're paying him a lot of money. He feels like he's got no choice. And I imagine that something very similar to these examples went into Black Swan. So we end up with this symbolism that maybe even most of the production team didn't know. I imagine there's no way Darren Aronofsky didn't know that something was going in, but there was forced symbolism going into this film.
Well, it's not just about the symbolism, it's about the story as well.
Well, the story as well, yeah.
The writing. And so whoever wrote it had to have known on some level what they were truly writing about.
Right. I think it's worth saying you can't just go to the IMDb and get a handle on who wrote it. There's other people forcing the writing. This is what I'm trying to say with the Superman story. There are other people driving the narrative, and they're putting things in that maybe that even the writers aren't aware of until it's too late, until the story is made, the narrative is set. So what we've got on the surface, we've got this story about a girl who's looking for perfection. She pushes herself further and further and further, and her mind starts to come apart. But I don't even buy that narrative. I don't buy any of that shit, because it's not supported by what we see on screen. It's not canon. Eventually, she achieves perfection through death. And that's supposed to be the end of the film. Even Natalie Portman didn't believe she died. She chooses to believe that she survived. It's left ambiguous enough, the white light. Well, a lot of people blacking out see a white light, so it's possible. But right at the beginning, right at the very front, you've got her mother looking at her back, and there's the mark on her back. No explanation of what it is, but it's a weird scene. It doesn't fit, and that's the mark where the wings are starting to come through, the feathers. So it's already happening before the narrative begins, before Leroy comes to the studio and the whole narrative journey begins. She's already turning into a swan. So she's already part of this. This is happening before the story drives it to it. So it doesn't make sense to say that she's driving herself from that moment. It's starting.
It could be that that opening scene that you're referencing is actually narrative-wise somewhere around the middle to the back half of the story, and that what we're seeing after everything we see after that is almost like a sequence of flashbacks, because her mother looks at the scar and she says something to the effect of what happened.
Yeah.
And so we could be seeing Natalie Portman's character Nina telling the story of what happened.
Well, that's not supported in the narrative.
No,
in terms of
something I thought of as you said.
It's worth pointing out when you see a mirror on screen as a symbol, it means that what you're seeing isn't real. It's only a reflection. And there are mirrors on top of mirrors on top of mirrors. The only scene where there are no mirrors is when Nina performs the final dance, when she performs the final act. And it's also worth noting that Darren Aronofsky said this is a horror film. This is meant to be psychological horror, and
that's how it's listed
isn't.
On the wiki page.
Yeah, it's not. Absolutely. When you watch the film, the audience will not buy into that. It's not a horror film. It's at best a drama, a melodrama.
Yeah.
So there is something going on there that the audience isn't necessarily picking up on. And it's fair to say that there's hidden symbolism there that you're not supposed to pick up on. It's like you don't have the key to this lock, and that's what we're going to be sticking in your hole.
Oh, buddy. You can't say that to them.
They love it. That's what they're here for. They want me to violate their hole.
Am I?
You're not on.
I'm not on.
Say something.
Something.
Why don't you turn your fucking mic on?
Test.
Yeah, it's working now.
Yeah, but it can see it jumps when I talk.
Yeah, it jumps when I talk, but I ain't doing this again.
Oh, no.
I'm not doing it again.
No, just run with it.
Run with it. Oh, yeah.
Nobody's watching this shit anyway.
I've got a list. I go through now and I check everything. I go in, I check the lights, and I just assumed you'd be able to press one button for 3 seconds.
People were rushing me today.
Because you were 10 minutes late.
Well, Shrainak was also being Shrainak. So between you and her, I just ran in, sat down, put on the mic.
Why do I even bother?
I don't know.
No, I don't know either. Moving on. It's okay, I did most of the talking anyway. You just sit there going, you can't say that. That's pretty much...
Isn't that my job?
Yeah, it's pretty much our thing. I don't want to talk about our things. So, what's this movie really about? Because it's not the surface narrative. Now, with The Whale, you've got a very ham-fisted narrative. It's clearly about America's decline towards death. America's collapsing, and that under its own weight. That's what he's trying to say, and it's so obvious that I suspect there's even a further narrative below that. Now, this has had forced things put into it. The mirrors are showing you that none of this is real. She's already starting to transform before the story starts. So it's not driven by her quest for perfection that she embarks on for wanting the role. It's not. So Leroy comes in and tells them about this story about the white swan.
And the black swan.
Yeah, so the white swan is virginal and innocent, which is a very obvious piece of symbolism. That's why women get married in white dresses. The innocence thing is very, very common. Then there's the black swan, which is of course the opposite of that. Now the black swan, it's been used since 2000 to represent an unusual event, something that changes things that's unusual. That's a black swan event. Now black swans were originally discovered in Australia in the 1600s, and everybody was surprised, and that's where we get that reference from. But the Aboriginals recognized the black swan as being covered in soot and rising from the ashes of a fallen society or something. So it's a phoenix. It's a phoenix metaphor. So that's what we're going to be looking at. In terms of mythology, a black swan is rising from the flames. So that's what we're looking at here. That ties back into the story Leroy is telling. And if you didn't really watch any more of the movie, like we didn't, that's pretty much what the film is about. It's about splitting these two swans.
Yes, but I would.
Well, it goes a lot further. Yeah. So Nina is there in a series of mirrors. She's getting ready. All these other dancers are getting ready around her, and they are very, very different people. All the rest of them are outgoing, normal people, and she is not. She's very weak.
Well, at this point, she's already. We're not seeing her before she joins. We're seeing her partway through her trip into madness.
We know what we're supposed to know. Her mother tells her you're the hardest working person in the troupe, so she's obviously got herself noticed. She's perfect in terms of expression, but she just doesn't have the confidence yet. She doesn't have the black swan, that fire. But all the other girls are very different. She's separated out. She makes a comment about something or other, and she's picked on for it, and they ask her what she means. And then another girl walks in, Mila Kunis, and everyone looks at her suddenly exactly the same way that they did when she first spoke. So there's a lot of symbols there, being surrounded by mirrors, and her coming in dressed in black while Nina is dressed in white. She's not real. She's not a real person. The others can't see her.
Well, she's a manifestation.
She's the first manifestation,
of Nina's psyche.
Yeah, it's starting to split. It's starting to be broken into different alternate personalities.
Which is, at its core, what this film is really about.
That's exactly what it's really about.
It's really about MK Ultra.
Yeah.
And Beta Monarch programming.
Yeah. Now, this requires a little more background. Now, the MK Ultra program was officially started as an answer to Russians' brainwashing program, but that's bullshit. It was long before that. And it's not science fiction. The American government was working with other governments.
And they'll admit to it.
They have no choice. Yeah. Classified documents have been declassified. We absolutely know that they were using mind control experiments on innocent victims. And they perfected the art of mind control. And one of the ways they did it is to split you into alters. They put you through something so physically and emotionally punishing.
It's ritual sexual abuse.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely an element of that, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
With sufficient brutality, you will create a alter to take responsibility. Yeah, somebody else will take over. You create another personality that will take over so that you can split between the two, and eventually you can have a new surface alter. And this is all historical. This is not something we've made up. This is something you can find out for yourself. The declassified documents are out there. People have written books about them. Very clever people have done a lot more research into this than we have, and it is not refuted at all. This happened, and it is continuing to happen to this day, even though they deny that. There's Jack Ruby, the man who killed Lee Harvey Oswald. His doctor was an MK Ultra plant. There is no questioning that. One of the founding fathers of the MK Ultra program after World War II previously worked on Adolf Hitler. There is a lot we simply don't know, that we're not being told. But these things are historically proven. There is no question that this existed, and that's the core of what this movie is about.
That's essentially what this movie is about. I don't think that any of the ballerina storyline, as it were, is real.
I
think it's all in her head.
I think the entire movie is not meant to be taken seriously. I don't think the movie is meant to be real. I think it is just one big metaphor.
Yeah.
Just like The Wrestler. He's not a wrestler. It's talking about abuse. She's not a ballerina. I like the way that they're using ballerinas as a metaphor. They're literally... Well, we talked about this last night, and I put a bit in one of my stories. We put a thing in a story called Hawkeye, where these politicians, local politicians, they're taken to lunch so that they can be bought into the corruption. And it's told from the perspective of the chef, who's really proud of himself. You know, these very rich, powerful people are coming to eat my lunch. And then it talks about what he had to do to get there. So this man has had to go to high school, colleges, universities, and he's had to become very qualified. He's put himself through all this abuse. He's got himself massive student debts. And for what? For the right to serve rich people the food that they want. So he's really given up his life to be a slave to these people. And that's exactly what it is. That's what this film is about. She's done the same. She's putting herself through a very unpleasant physical regime of abuse so that she can...
on the surface.
So that she can be this beautiful thing for other people to look at. Yeah. And that's what we're really talking about. With the Monarch Beta programming, that's what they're doing. And a lot of celebrities are used in this way. And again, there's lots of very good videos out there. You don't have to even leave this platform. There's a lot of good stuff out there that will help to add evidence to this. In terms of proof, you've got to decide what you believe. But this is what the director believed. This is what it's about.
Yeah, this is what we're talking about. I think we're watching the mental process of a woman coping and creating an altar.
Several. Yeah, I don't think any of the characters are real.
In her head.
I don't think her mother's real. I don't think the other dancers are real. I think everything is meant to be. This is an internal process. You're seeing her being broken down into these different characters. And ultimately, the Black Swan, Mila Kunis, becomes the surface altar. That's why she's walking around and she's picturing other people with her face, because these people are
Well, Nina finally breaks.
She breaks and becomes
kills
perfection.
Herself.
Well, she does that. Altar dies.
Yeah.
That one dies.
That's what I mean.
And a new surface altar takes dominance.
Yeah.
So it's not dead. It's in there somewhere, but it's so deeply suppressed that it's gone. It's your surface personality. Once that's been broken up and split into different personalities, you're buried.
We look at Britney Spears.
Yes. Another one. They always cut their hair. It's like some sort of
Act
symbolism.
Of rebellion.
Yeah. Well, an act of submission, especially for a woman. You cut your hair off. That's a big deal.
Yeah, but I think it's rebelling against the handlers in the program and.
Well, I don't agree.
Making themselves not beautiful.
I don't agree. I think with her, she was freaking out. She was losing control or gaining control, and shaving her head was symbolic of her submitting to the control, because then she was back under control. And we see this with a lot of celebrities. A lot of female celebrities will shave their head and then they'll have success. I think it's a submissive act.
Maybe.
And not just shave. I mean, they'll cut off their hair, and then suddenly they'll be much more popular or successful. You see it quite a lot. Men, a lot of them have black eyes. The black eye thing, that's quite common as well.
For a while there, I don't know what kind of weird thing they were making them do, but I noticed that a very large number of stars have that same left eyebrow scar, just in the exact same spot, same scar. Jason Momoa to Mark Hamill. There's tons of guys with that fucking scar.
Yeah, and then they'll come out with some insane left-wing philosophies that just make no sense.
Like, I wonder how you get a person to believe that.
Yeah. So that's what this film is about. They're breaking her down. They're sexualizing her. She says she wasn't a virgin, but that's probably not true.
Yeah.
She's clearly, let's go by what the film shows us. She's clearly completely childish. We see her eating a grapefruit at the beginning and getting so excited by how pink it is, which is kind of a sad scene that you're that excited about half a grapefruit because she's starving herself to death so she can be better for other people. Not at any point in the film is there really anything she wants except to serve. Yeah. She just wants to be somebody else's puppet. And that's really the symbolism behind this film. It's about, and that's what I was told. And I went in watching this film knowing that, and then it all comes together. You see all the symbolism. She's turning into the Swan. Again, that hallucination is just meant to represent how she is becoming something else. She's changing into the stories that we're told. Those are the stories that he tells them. All of them at the beginning is just a suggestion, and these people are then following the suggestion. He's
the handler.
He's the handler.
Yeah.
Well, the handler is the guy in charge. He's usually someone who knows a few rules. There's usually office,
like control words that they can use.
Yeah. And if you look into it, it's not through Google. You're going to have to find an alternative search engine. You used to be able to find all this stuff, but it's all been suppressed now. There's a lot of stuff out there. A lot of celebrities have fallen into this. A lot of accusations have gone around. Avoid the conspiracy theory nonsense, and look at the facts, and it definitely holds up. So that's what this film is really about. It's about a girl going into monarch. It's the monarch butterfly. I always thought this is kind of an odd fact, but the monarch butterfly passed on information genetically to its offspring. It passed on memories. That's why the monarch butterfly became the key to the monarch programming. The abuse that they put your parents through will be received by your children, and it's true. This is how they pass on generational abuse.
Genetic memory.
Yeah, that's why you end up seeing these celebrities. Usually, they're usually sons or daughters of people who have gone through generational abuse because they're easier to control and break down. That's why you see the same thing over and over again. Look at especially the young boys in Hollywood, the child actors. They usually they come out later and talk about horrendous degrees of abuse.
Oh yeah, even there's a new documentary that's about to drop talking about that with Nickelodeon. All of these.
Is this the
Quiet on Set?
Oh no, I don't know that one. Okay.
Yeah. That looks actually like it might be pretty interesting. Not a fun watch.
Yeah.
But interesting.
Yeah. Well, Corey Haim was one of the most vocal that came out, but he's very confused, and a lot of what he has said has been refuted. There isn't. He's very confused. He's gone. There's no question that he went through something, but he doesn't seem to be able to maintain
a credible story about it.
Yeah. But the other witnesses have definitely corroborated it. It's just that he doesn't seem to be able to hold it all together very well. As you would expect from someone who's been brainwashed, who's had their head split, and then systematically, violently abused. And unfortunately, this is how Hollywood is. This is why the whole thing needs to be taken down. This keeps coming up. This is not an accident that it's completely run by...
Hollywood, the music industry...
Probably worse, actually.
Yeah, the music industry is worse. Pretty much everybody in the music industry goes through some level of this programming.
Yeah.
Even most of the men.
And it's worth noting that if you're watching these films, you're going through it too. These films are designed to reprogram you.
Yeah, and if you want to go deep conspiracy theory, I won't even state anything. I'll let you decide. Go look up the frequency at which the sounds are played on music, and then look up what that kind of frequency has, what effects that frequency have on the brain and brain waves.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, It's very obvious, and there's no reason for it because it makes it worse to listen to. And it works. I mean, gangster rap has destroyed a generation. It's
not by itself, but it's
certainly inspirational.
Yeah, it's definitely helped.
Yeah, it's this kind of crap, this kind of turning villains into heroes, and again we see this in movies. Disney especially, they keep making movies trying to make sympathy with the villains, almost as if they were worshipping Satan or something.
That's crazy talk.
Just top of my head nonsense.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter what you or I believe. What matters is what do they believe? Because they're putting that into their films, and we're putting those films in front of our children. So you can't, and this is why it's so important that you can't trust the surface narrative of a movie, because a movie is a thing, I call it passive media, where you're watching a TV show or a movie and your brain dumbs right down. It goes into a twilight. They've done
studies that prove that you essentially enter an almost sleep-like state.
It's dream state. Yeah. You're in the twilight between sleep and dream. So this is running, and your conscious ability to critically evaluate what you see is switched off. You are not able to critically evaluate. You're not able to make decisions about what's happening. You're absorbing information. The opposite is true when you read. Your brain is more awake, more aware. You're evaluating everything. You're part of the narrative. You're drawn into the story. This is a passive media, and it's all about television programming.
And this is something they've specialized. And they look at me like I'm fucking crazy.
Well, yeah.
There's a reason that televisions used to say, literally, stay tuned for your regularly scheduled programming. They call them programs.
Yeah. If you want to really stretch that, that's why Earth is called a planet. We'll get into that another day. But you've got to, symbols have value, and calling it a program is not a mistake. Especially when the MK Ultra thing was run by the government, it was rolled out to the media, and we've never seen such passive, hopeless people who just don't feel like they have any control over their lives. I mean, even if the media was positive, nobody would be recommending you absorb this degree of it.
No.
Netflix, nobody would be saying, let's have a Netflix night where we sit and absorb an entire TV show. That's not healthy. Nobody should be doing that.
No, I mean, I've recently come to the realization, rewatching things with Sranek, of just how quickly we absorb this stuff now. 10, 15 years ago, if I wanted to watch a television show, it was going to take weeks of my life.
In small chunks.
Unless I was watching it in syndication, when it re-aired or aired, I would have to go to Walmart or somewhere, buy the DVD, take it home. There's a whole process to it. There's like 4 episodes on a DVD.
Yeah.
You're doing stuff. You get 1 or 2 done, here and there sporadically throughout the week. So be it. Now, just in the last 2 weeks, I've probably watched 7, 8 seasons of prestige television.
In his defence, his partner is heavily pregnant, and there isn't much choice.
Yeah.
It's not like he can go out dancing. But a couple of things to note: when you do watch something on TV, you're watching a TV show and it's running for weeks and weeks, especially with a story that runs through the entire series. You're watching Reacher or something, and the next episode you watch, you don't need any reminding. And that's because you are consciously conditioned. You are back into that trance. So you've gone back to that altered state of consciousness that you were in when you watched the previous episode. We've all done it. You go back and you watch the next episode and it makes perfect sense, and you wait for the next one, and you're a different person while you're watching it. You're passively absorbing this stuff, and in the next episode after, you're back in that place. Just like if you were being hypnotized on stage, it's the same thing. You're back in that place. Another thing is, when you walk out of a cinema and you feel different, when you're inspired and you feel like you're the protagonist, again, you are being programmed. We've all had this at some point, some feeling that, we're back in that place, or we're inspired by this character. And it's because this is a very sophisticated mechanism of control. And this is why modern independent movies don't work anymore, because those sophisticated methods are not embedded. So we're not getting that dopamine high. We're not inspired in the same way that we used to be by big blockbuster cinematic movies, because the symbolism is not painted into the story. So we have to watch it with a more critical eye, and people who have grown up watching this kind of media don't like it because they don't like thinking for themselves. When
we're not getting symbolism anymore. We're not being led to an answer. We are being shouted at directly.
Well, at this point, the shouting's over. Now it's mostly just they're keeping the lid on it. It's done. We're boxed. We're caged in. Now, and this is what you see with modern liberals. They make absolutely no sense. And if you go back to the Russian brainwashing experiments, they were discovering that the people who have been brainwashed can't tell you why they believe what they believe, but they will defend it with their lives. They will defend their new adjustments. And you see this with liberals.
Talked about this.
What's that?
Yuri Bezmenov talked about this.
If you've never heard of Yuri Bezmenov, look him up. He was talking about this in the 80s, about the future, and he nailed almost every detail.
Better than Orwell.
Yeah.
You'd have thought he wrote the plan on what's happening.
Well, someone wrote a plan on what's happening, and Yuri Bezmenov was warning us that this was coming, and he got it absolutely right.
Yeah.
And that's why you see these liberals absolutely, unquestioningly believing something that makes utterly no sense. They have been indoctrinated and programmed, and you probably can't rescue them. I mean, if you look at the Matrix, it does say they're so dependent on the system.
They're the lady, or not the lady in red.
The lady in red scene.
Yeah, lady in red scene, but they're more of a cipher. Yeah. They'll shoot you in the back for a fake state.
Well, no, they explain in the scene, these people are so indoctrinated into it that they are a threat. They can't survive now without the system, and they've adopted it. And this is, again, Plato's allegory of the cave, that once you're free and you go back, they do not want to be free. They don't want to have to face the reality that's out there, because it could be potentially painful.
It's easier to just watch the shadows on the wall.
Yeah, and this is what you see, and this is where we are. And you imagine Plato was thousands of years ago warning us about this, and he was talking about political indoctrination. Now we're seeing the media absolutely controlling what people think and say and do, and it's extremely dangerous. And this movie, I can't decide if this movie was a warning or a joke. Are they looking at you and giggling? Are they laughing at you?
That's what I always expect. My answer is almost always joke.
Well, I mean, look at Darren Aronofsky's other movies. The Whale, it represents America dying, but is he laughing about that, or is he warning us?
Again, I don't think they're warnings. I think that once you reach that level, you're in it to some degree.
To some degree, but some of these people probably are whistleblowers. There's a lot of whistleblowers. You always get this argument, well, if conspiracy theories were real, then surely someone would be blowing the whistle. And they are, and you're not listening.
People do all the time.
It's all the time.
There's supercuts out there of just shit that celebrities have let slip in interviews and
look at someone like Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey has seen some shit that's blown his mind, and now he's out there trying to warn you. He's
doing it in a zany way.
He's doing it in his way, and he probably doesn't understand half of what he's seen. But he's out there throwing warnings about, and obviously their careers disappear when this happens. There are whistleblowers all the time. And I don't know if this movie was glorifying what they've done, or a warning about what they've done, or even if they didn't even know. How far did Darren Aronofsky really know what this film was about?
How much was directed by a studio mandate or producer?
My guess is not much, not with a budget of 13 million.
No.
My guess is that he was very involved in the writing of this story and the presentation of this. To be fair, a good director could take any script and embed this symbol into that movie and change the way, and change the way the whole film works.
Sucker Punch. That's what Sucker Punch was about.
Well, yeah, Sucker Punch is a very different approach to telling the same story.
Yeah.
The girl at the beginning, what's her name?
I don't remember anymore. It's been too long.
None of what happens is real. They're all alters. Every single girl in the movie is a part of her split personality, and she's dying.
Yeah, she's making this one last attempt to to free herself, to save herself.
And eventually she realizes that she can't, so she lets one of the other authors take control for her, so she gets to just disappear. And it's once you know this, it's a really ugly story. It's very hard to watch. When you realize that this is actually happening to real people, and it has been happening for a long time. And again, it starts in an orphanage. It starts with physical abusing a child who then can't resist.
And they do this stuff in such a fun way. It was smart in that sense. Like, you're having fun when you're watching the action scenes, and then afterwards, the aftermath of what you just saw hits you, and the implications of it, and it's like, every time.
I will say that even though I'm not a huge fan of the movie or the director, he does a better job of at least making it fun.
Yeah.
You can get through that movie, apart from just the awful ending. And I don't mean awful as in poorly written, it's just very hard to watch once you know what it's about.
Brutal.
But at least up to that point, it is a fun film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cinematic nonsense in there, which just makes it likable.
And pretty good special effects for when they made it.
Well, I think he was smart enough to walk the line and have the special effects covered by grain and cloud, and it worked because it was symbolism.
It was very dream state.
Yeah. I mean, there is CGI in Black Swan, and for the most part, it's invisible. There's this big ongoing fight between Sarah Lane and Natalie Portman over who did most of the dance work. And everyone says it was Natalie Portman, but the dancer said no, it wasn't. She did most of the dancing, and that's been brewing ever since. And it's interesting that Sarah Lane's career went nowhere after that. And apparently they look alike, but she hasn't even got a photograph on the IMDb. Apparently they look so alike that they were struggling to tell them apart on set. But apparently her face was CGI'd on. You really can't tell. You can tell it's a Hollywood movie, so there are cuts. Awkward cuts where you'll cut to their feet and you'll cut back to the face, and you can see it's a movie. It's not real. You can see that, but for the most part, the special effects are fairly invisible.
Yeah.
It's not badly done.
I didn't hate it when I watched it, but I know what it's about, and I remember that it's not a fun film.
It's not an enjoyable film.
No.
There's no part of watching this film that's actually enjoyable. I watched it at the cinema knowing what it was about, and I was told, go and watch it. This is what it's about. Decide for yourself. And I watched it, and I walked out rubbing my chin thinking, yeah, okay, that's definitely what it was about. And I say, everybody else in the cinema was going, what the hell did I just watch? And that's not going to make a popular film. No. There's nothing good about this film. Even their performances, it was quality acting.
Yeah, I mean,
it was
the
decent.
Performances are serviceable.
I'd say they're better than that. I mean, by today's standards, this is proper acting.
Yeah, sure.
And method acting. It wasn't just some pretty girl putting on a ballet costume. They studied. They spent years on their own dime as well. They studied. They worked hard. They lost the weight. They put in the hours. They learned how to perform this stuff. They put in the work, and they look the part. It looks good. But
it's a very competent film.
Very competent. Yeah. Darren Aronofsky is very competent.
It won 5 awards.
Yeah, just the 2 leads, wasn't it?
I'd have to look it back up which specific awards they were.
I think it was just the leads.
They won 5 different awards for this film.
And Natalie Portman deserved to. It was a good performance. I don't think she knew. She's come out and said, I think my main character survives at the end, and she's found her perfection, and that she's free now from...
Oh, she didn't understand. She didn't understand.
No, she didn't know. None of the actresses knew, or actors. Yeah, I mean, you can watch it without even knowing that, but if you do, it doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible film.
Yeah.
I've never understood with 2001 AD with Stanley Kubrick. Everyone says best sci-fi film ever made, and you watch it and think that film is shit unless you know how to watch it. It's symbolism. Everything is cut. Everything is changed around, and it's a jigsaw puzzle for you to reassemble. It is not a fun story. It makes no fucking sense.
Stories.
Yeah.
Well, I take that back.
Some of his early work.
Dr. Why can't I think of the name of that film?
You've done it to me now. I can't remember it either. The Apocalypse one.
Yeah. Why I came to, or how I came to love the atomic bomb.
Yeah. Yeah, some of his he did a period English piece as well, and again it's just a cohesive story. But once he found his feet, and once he was able to do what he wanted to do, he went off and made these symbolic movies. But they're not good. It's like The Shining. It's not good.
No.
It's a horrible performance from Jack.
We just can't remember anything.
I can't remember
names
anything
today.
The dude.
The guy
from The Shining.
The Shining.
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a horrible performance for him, and he's a much better actor than that. And I know Kubrick kept saying take after take after take, and then he would take the worst ones. By the time the actors are just angry and fed up with it all. That was the performance he wanted. He didn't want it to be a good performance for whatever reason, because it was all symbolic. There's been very clever analysis of that film where they've gone around the hotel and none of it lines up. It's all meant to keep you off balance. None of it works. It's just shot out of sequence, so every corner goes into a place that doesn't exist on the floor plan. But he makes a very obvious point of showing you how the hotel works, and then shows you that the story doesn't fit into it. It doesn't fit. He's always telling you this doesn't fit. It's like in 2001, the obelisk. Spoilers, the obelisk, and then there's a bit where they're flying the ship right at the beginning, where the monitor is showing you the obelisk being turned to the side. You have to look at it the other way around, which turns the obelisk into the cinema screen, and he's telling you we're now looking at another story. We're looking at the story inside the story. The narrative is embedded inside the narrative, and you have to look at it a different way. Very clever, but not very entertaining, and that's what Black Swan is. It's very clever.
It's not very much entertaining.
It's more cohesive than 2001, but it isn't a good story. It's not fun to watch. I can't imagine what kind of person would say, "Oh, great! There's a film about a girl going crazy and ultimately killing herself for the amusement of others. Let's go. Let's get some popcorn. I'm in." You know,
let's buy it on DVD so we can watch it again next weekend.
Yeah. We'll want to keep watching this forever. I mean, I did sit through The Whale voluntarily. I wanted to see what the fuss was about, and I know Darren Aronofsky film's going to have some symbolism in them, so I watched it. I was a little disappointed how ham-fisted and how awkward it is, but he's getting older, and people do get less sophisticated as they get older, especially someone like Kubrick, who no one ever really... He meant for people to figure out his films. He meant for them to be understood, and they never were. So I think by the end, they were just getting more and more nonsense, because he realised that no one's ever going to get this shit. So he gave up.
Well... That's a different conversation. He died. He died
at a midway through.
Yeah, very suspicious time.
Yeah, midway through making a film where he was literally exposing the people behind the masks.
Yeah, all the evil shit.
Yeah. And then half the film was literally destroyed.
Yeah. And it's unwatchable.
Yeah, That's why I'm never going to bother with it, because it's not the film he was trying to make.
Yeah,
it's the sanitized.
What's left is the what you just said, the sanitized version. So, Black Swan.
This is probably our most controversial episode.
Cinematically, I would give it a 8, but narratively, I give it like a 5. It's not fun. I don't recommend it.
No, I'd probably agree with you. Yeah. To look at it, it's an achievement. It's a good-looking film. It's very clever. The acting is pretty decent. He gets a lot out of those actresses. For $13 million, it's a hell of a film.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how much they paid them to do that shit.
I don't know. You don't get that information on the IMDb. No. But they were so into it. She was paying for her own medical, but they couldn't afford a medic. She hurt herself, and she had to pay for all that herself. In fact, one of the scenes where she's going and getting medical attention was actually real, and they just filmed it because they couldn't afford to. So she was.
Can we just follow you? Yeah. Okay. Come on, guys.
Yeah. And she ended up marrying the choreographer in the film, the guy helping her dance. That was her ex-husband.
Well. Those Hollywood relationships.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these people are pretty fucked up people.
Yeah.
You make a living out of pretending you're something you're not. You're not going to be mentally stable.
Will.
No. Talking of which, I'm a writer.
And a teacher.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I'll be doing that tomorrow.
Yeah, I fucking hate it.
No, I don't hate it.
I mean, I don't hate it. I say that, but it's okay.
I don't hate it, but it's okay. You sound like you're justifying it. I've got to do it. I might as well not hate it so much.
No.
I like my job. Give me my wife's box.
Oh, fucking hell.
We're going to pick another one. Now, hopefully, this is going to be a less drudge movie, and we'll actually watch this one.
All right, who's...
Me!
Okay.
Okay. So in here are lots of bits of paper with movies on them. I have no idea. Are we ready? Megan.
God damn it! See, I demand a repull to a movie that's not fucking Megan.
I want to watch this.
I don't.
I watched this a couple of years ago, I guess it came out. I've always been a fan of Blumhouse, ever since Upgrade, but they've never ever got back to that kind of standard or quality. But this... There's some stuff in this. There's some stuff that is interesting in this film, and there's sequels coming out soon. They're working on a sequel.
Worse.
It's happening, man. It's happening.
I'm gonna be sick that day. Next week.
You gotta watch this one. We're gonna get some whiskey and we're gonna watch this on Friday night together. And I'm gonna film it. I'm gonna keep going to you. What a great film. What did you have with this? What was the problem with this?
It's just not my cup of tea. I don't do Chucky or Jason or Halloween or Megan or Mama or Insidious or...
Horror films.
Yeah, in general, they're just goofy.
It is goofy. It is goofy, but there's some hidden symbolism here, and we're doing Megan.
I want to do a good movie.
It is a good... Well, it's not a good movie, but it's happening.
I'll think about it.
It's happening.
I'm not picking that up.
Don't care. Someone will clean up this. I assume someone cleans this place up. I don't know. At some point.
Yeah, I mean, it looks totally put together.
Yesterday, all the chairs were over there. I was trying something new.
They're still over there.
No, these ones. I moved all the thing.
That's not a chair, it's a couch.
Yeah, well, it's a chair in it. It's chair-shaped. Chair-shaped. Because the studio is boring. We need more lights and stuff.
I wonder if they could hear me in the first half.
I don't think anyone tunes in to listen to you.
Fair.
They could hear you a little bit. We'll find out when we go back through the video edit.
Yeah, so...
Professionals that we are.
Enjoy the rest of your...
life.
Yeah.
No, we'll be back next week to ruin it for you.
Maybe.
With probably a less heavy film. I'm not going to spoil it by telling you what I think it's all about, because I think really it's about how the director isn't making a film that he thinks is actually going to be any good, and he's just trying to rip off better films. so that's what I think it's about. So
you might be onto something.
Yeah. Oh no, Blumhouse. I can imagine what this guy must look like. The producer, Blumhouse. I kind of imagine he's this gigantic, bloated thing. Effectively,
much like Brendan Fraser in The Whale.
But he's basically the fat suit without Brendan Fraser in it. He's just some amorphous blob sucking in money and just. Yeah, he's the fat suit. You mean I've got to go on stage wearing Blumhouse?
All right.
Yeah. Who else can we offend?
Oh, we could offend everybody, but then we'd be cancelled immediately.
Do you know who I really hate?